Nigel. Gregory. Ben.
Bubbly.
Gregory. Gregory. He right here.
You don't know.
Gregory. Nigel, Gregory, Ben. Nigel, Gregory, Ben.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yes. Yes. 0. 12. 12.
Nick,
Well,
you're gonna have to stop this fucking my friend. Let's go.
Run down. It's in a con. I mean, I know.
Is that right? It won't keep up.
Stayed in the hospital for 6 months. 6 months.
No. Listen.
What?
This man almost took my life.
No.
Listen.
Yeah.
You know something?
What?
You know something?
What?
Listen.
What?
What are you doing?
Looking at you. Looking at you. Looking at you. Looking at you.
He got a million of a sad president.
Say. Say.
Sad.
Here.
Come again. Come here.
On this channel, we often talk about many great legendary martial arts personalities who achieved incredible heights in that industry. However, today we will touch on the other side of that sport. In this video, we'll talk about athletes that received fatal injuries or traumas that made them disabled. Please don't forget about the likes, comments with forwards, and subscribe to the channel. Here we go. Chris BYRD. Chris BYRD was one of the most prominent heavyweights of the 2000s. In his best years, he beat numerous well-known boxers, Vitaly Klitschko, David Hua, Evander Holyfield, and many others. One could even say that he was Floyd Mayweather of the heavyweight division. Besides that, he won a silver medal in the Olympic Games and became the first one in history to earn a prize in one category and conquer the Boxing World Championship in another. In other words, at that time, this guy was a dream for any more or less famous promoter. However, he couldn't avoid the disease of many champions, encephalopathy. For almost 2 years, BYRD was a cripple who suffered from hellish and excruciating pains. The public got exposed to this news only in 2018. He admitted that himself, even though the legendary boxer retired from the professional sports back in 2009. Chris stated that he suffers from encephalopathy, which is also known as heavyweight world champion's disease. It's a certain kind of post-traumatic Parkinsonism caused by recurrent light head injuries. Heavyweight legends like Muhammad Ali, Floyd Patterson, Jack Dempsey, and Joe Louis were familiar with the illness like no other, but BYRD's case happened to be a lot more severe. Chris, I'm officially a disabled person. It's like my legs are on fire. I felt such pain that I wanted to cut them off a couple of times, and I had to be stopped. But if that relieves me from pain, then I consent. Cut them off. I don't box anymore, so I don't need legs. It's so bad that I'm thinking about leg amputation. Box is a sport that directly affects your brain. Every time one steps in a ring, your brain rattles in the skull. Boxers make for a living by getting punched in the head. The former champion went through a number of surgeries that didn't really change anything. Chris admitted that he suffered from a post-traumatic disorder. That's why he had to use medication that negatively affected his mental health. Chris, I live near the ocean. One time I came outside and wanted to jump and drown myself. I didn't want to live. These pills drove me insane. I often consume marijuana. That's how I stay functional. Otherwise, I would have already lost my mind. Many have mental problems. My two brothers, who are 55 and 60 years of age, suffer from dementia due to boxing. Everybody has problems now. Layman Brewster lost his eye because of boxing. James Toney became an absolute psycho. Riddick Bowe is just done. That's the reality of our sport nobody wants to talk about. After retiring, boxers can't find a job. They don't have education. They find themselves in this huge and evil world and don't know what to do. But fortunately, this man is luckier than the other athletes in this compilation. In September of 2020, the legendary boxer managed to soften the impact of his sickness and sensationally announced that he plans to return to the ring.
Whoop, whoop. What am I known for? Slickness, speed, reflexes. It's still there. I'm telling you, at 50 years old, look at my body. It's on. Who gonna hang with the old man? Nobody can hang with the old man. I got energy all day. I will be middleweight champion. Definitely. Let's get it.
Right now, Chris Bird is in a good physical and mental state. He doesn't lose optimism and hopes for the best. There is no specific news about his comeback in the media yet, but in all fairness, it doesn't really matter. The most important thing is that the legendary boxer feels great and is in good spirits. We wish him a long and happy life from the bottom of our hearts. Gary Goodridge. When MMA as a sport just began its existence, it was very different from what we see now. Fighters could have numerous fights in one night, and a month later they would return to the cage. One of the famous representatives of that era is Gary Goodridge. A once famous Canadian debuted in the professional sport only at the age of 30. His first appearance in the developed fighting industry took place at UFC 8. However, that doesn't mean that the early years of this guy were not flooded with constant fights and training sessions to the limit. Even though Goodridge was always seen as an average level fighter, he was very popular and in high demand, as he frequently delivered vivid and spectacular performances. Fights of a huge and outrageous 191cm Gary always inspired excitement in the public. For his entire MMA career, the Canadian had more than 40 fights, winning 23 of them. Gary beat such well-known fighters as Don Frye, Valentin Overeem, Bob Schreiber and many others. Moreover, while he performed in MMA, he competed in kickboxing too, where he also had more than 40 fights. The professional career of the Big Daddy ended in 2010 on an 8-fight losing streak. Numerous missed blows and frequent performances reminded of themselves, and Gary started to have health problems. In 2012, doctors diagnosed Goodridge with degenerative dementia, disease that causes memory issues, speech impediments, and torturing headaches.
Truly, honestly believe if it wasn't for the pills that I'm taking, my life would have been done a long time ago.
You think you may have?
Oh, absolutely.
Would you have?
I would have taken my life. Absolutely.
You would have killed yourself.
Absolutely. Mental disability is a huge thing. It's got me crippled. My days suck. Probably given a little bit of depression. I could get a job, but I forget I had the job. It doesn't get better. This is the best that you will be.
Currently, Gary Goodridge still lives in Canada with his family. A loving family constantly supports the former athlete in these circumstances. Sometimes he can't even remember his way back home. However, despite that, Big Daddy still attends the gym every now and then. He helps beginner fighters in their preparation and shares his experience. Kevin Randleman. Unfortunately, we can't help but touch on a tragic story of the legendary monster in this video. Kevin Randleman is a true legend who hardcore fans of that time loved almost from the very beginning. Moreover, they were the ones to give him that nickname. And in the crowd or at home knew, as soon as this guy enters the cage, it's going to be fireworks. And even though he was a monster at that time he performed, outside of fighting, Randleman was known as the most humble and decent guy in the whole world. There are many testaments to that. What to say about the most well-known case when Kevin saw his fans tweet where he admitted that he wanted to end his own life, and Randleman reached out to him immediately. At first, he texted him, and then he made a call. He supported him like a real friend and a caring person, and helped him to overcome that burden. In the middle of the 90s, Randleman performed at vicious Vale Tudo performances at Brazil. Then he transitioned to UFC, where he conquered the championship in 1997. In the beginning of 2000s, he moved to Pride, where he became the first one to knock out the great Crow Cop.
Randleman with a shot back up to his feet. Excellent.
However, Kevin's trump card is his of 17 to 16. Quite an average stat, but either way, Randleman is forever a legend. Actually, this guy had a lot of health problems. Of course, a bigger chunk of it was taken by steroids that Kevin used quite regularly in the 2000s, and it also couldn't go without some serious injuries. Randleman had more than 20 surgeries in his life, and every one of them weakened his system bit by bit. But the most severe disease that Monster suffered was from Staphylococcus. This very illness took the most of his health, with no exaggeration. His immune system was so weak that he began to rot alive. Real holes began to appear on his body, which we can't show in this video for obvious reasons. And after 5 years of his retirement, Kevin Randleman's life suddenly came to an end. On February the 11th of 2016, the fighter passed away in hospital where he was put in due to pneumonia. The cause of death happened to be heart failure. He was 44. Rest in peace, legendary monster. Magomed Abdusalamov. Actually, the history of boxing knows many cases when after performing in the ring, some fighters couldn't go back to normal life. Unfortunately, even nowadays, when medicine has made numerous steps forward in its development, there are moments when even doctors can't really do anything. Then it is followed by many kind words, long affections, and eventually condolences. And after a while, the victim of the sport, unfortunately, is forgotten, as viewers began to follow new gladiators. But the story of Magomed Abdusalamov is not about that. Indeed, Maga would not return to the sport, but every single day for him is a new challenge. The role of his coaches and cornermen are taken by his incredibly courageous wife and loving daughters. So, November the 2nd of 2013. By that time, Magomed Abdusalamov was on a perfect 18-fight winning streak in 18 fights. Was two-time Russian champion, and all of that for a rather short period of time. At just 23 years of age, he came from Thai boxing and debuted 5 years earlier. And there it is, the upcoming fight in New York at the Madison Square Garden against the powerful Cuban Mike Perez. Both boxers acknowledged that in case of a win, one of them will contest the WS title, which at that time was held by Klitschko. The stakes were as high as ever. As soon as the fight started, both boxers did not waste any time. As they promised, they began to put on a vivid spectacle from the very first minute. And it became pretty clear quickly that for Abdusalamov, who never stayed in the profession. Gerald McClellan. One of the most vicious fights in world boxing history took place on February the 25th of 1995 for the undisputed WBC title of the second middleweight class between British boxer Nigel Benn, who at that time was the welterweight champion from the USA, and Gerald McClellan, middleweight champion of the world.
Most violent man that ever put on a pair of gloves.
The fight made a lot of waves in British society. It was even proposed to ban boxing. The referee happened to be the one to blame, as he didn't know the English language and didn't stop the fight in time. In reality, this tragic story had a lot of significant factors in play. The community puts a bigger portion of guilt on the famous scammer and promoter of that time, Don King. Sure, he was different due to his ability to create stars. However, it wasn't a secret to anybody that he used athletes as disposable material to make money. Muhammad Ali, Larry Holmes, and Mike Tyson are a testament to that. Gerald also worked with King, and for some time, quite successfully. McClellan was different from the other boxers due to his technique, speed, reflexes, and punching power. The fans called him Miniature Tyson. And prior to this fight, King insisted that McClellan should change his coach. Instead of an experienced Emmanuel Stewart, he moved to Stan Johnson. All because King needed somebody to strive for results, even if that meant neglecting the athlete's health. Stan was perfect for the role. Even though the American was considered the favorite, McClellan couldn't knock out his opponent in the first round. He knocked him down so badly that Ben even fell through the ropes. It didn't stop the Brit though, and he quickly recovered. Already in the second round, the fight got even. Boxers repeatedly clinched and exchanged crushing blows on the exit. The fans noted that they haven't seen a more vicious fight before. The fight went that way for 6 rounds. The American who got angry at that fight went on for too long, became nervous and desperate. He got hit with a couple of heavy shots to the head, for which he paid too big of a price. Before the 7th round, he asked his coach to stop the fight. "I don't know what's happening with me." Johnson refused to react to his words. King definitely wouldn't appreciate surrender in the fight, and McClellan was really getting worse. By the 9th round, he became sluggish, barely attacked, constantly took his mouthpiece out and blinked often. The referee, as well as his cornerman, dismissed these signs. As for Ben, it seemed like he worked on an adrenaline and was only taking off. In the 10th round, after a series of blows to the back of the head, McClellan took a knee and pointed at the area where the punch landed, but he was ignored once again. He tried to get back on his feet but fell on his knee again, waited for the countdown to end and headed to the corner while the crowd erupted. McClellan lost consciousness several times. He couldn't see anything and hardly breathed, so he had to use an oxygen mask. It was clear that the American needed urgent help from the doctors. He was put on a stretcher and sent to the hospital in an ambulance. On his way there, while being conscious, he asked only one thing. Was I knocked out? I didn't give up, right? In the hospital, doctors removed the hematoma that occurred in Gerald's brain, and the boxer spent 11 days in a coma.
How does a man who almost kills another man sleep at night? I wish you were dead. That is how I felt.
Right now, the American is alive, but he is very bad. A former boxer couldn't get back to his feet. He still barely hears and can't see, and also he remembers almost nothing. But his mind was rather clear and he recognizes his close ones. When he's told how strong he was, McClellan wonders, is that true? Was I really that cool? Gerald lives with his sister Lisa, who watches after him, and his wife and kids have abandoned him. But the world has good people. Famous athletes annually support McClellan and his sister because the recovery is not cheap and each year requires more than $70,000 for a proper care of the athlete. Unfortunately, this tragic story is without a happy ending. The only positive and beneficial takeaway from that is experience. It's such a shame that this guy got caught up in multiple adverse circumstances, starting from his surroundings to bad and incompetent people. The only thing left is to sincerely wish Gerald McClellan good health and give respect to his sister for the labor she puts in every day.
Always wants to know if he lost the fight that night. My opinion is and will always be based on what I've seen. I tell him no.